What's going on, everybody? Hey, first of all, I want to say thanks to everybody who showed up and hung out with us last night on the For Collectors channel. Thank you to my buddy Theo of Clemente Collector for including me with a great group of guys, himself, plus my buddy Ray from Philly, and my good friend Chris from Missouri. So thanks for that. But that's not the last live you're going to have of me this week. Again, tomorrow night, MidLife Live number 6. It is going to be really, really fun. My panel is fantastic. There will absolutely be some lively discussion. And one of the things we're going to discuss is the topic that we all responded to with my question from last week, which was the whole thought process behind consolidation. This is a topic that I like to revisit every 4 to 5 months. And the reason is because a lot of us, our opinions change on this. My buddy Rick over at Rick's Vintage Oddball Cards, last year going into the National, he was targeting some big boy cards. In fact, there was one in particular he went after. He came home with some amazing big cards. And then he did a stream the other day with John Mangini, and he said, yeah, I want to fill in some stuff. I want to fill in some binder projects and stuff. We all change. We're constantly reevaluating, and that's part of the fun. And so we're going to be talking about a lot of things tomorrow night, but one of them is consolidation. We're going to be talking about the National. We're going to talk about some fallout and what the other two guys think about Mr. Moynihan's recent comments about SGC only having about 18 months left in his prediction. So there's a lot of fun stuff that's going to happen. You will not want to miss that one. Again, it is Tuesday night, June 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. That's tomorrow night if you're watching this on Monday. So with that said, I want to take a minute here now and start to look at some of your responses from that question from last week about the consolidation movement. Now, is everyone doing it? No. Are a lot of people doing it? It seems like it. Is it good? Is it bad? What are the repercussions? Let's hear your thoughts on that right here.
Several people said consolidation is the only way to acquire my grail cards. This first one says, for many of us, the consolidation movement is the only way to afford more expensive cards, especially now that some iconic cards have risen to the price of a used car. My specific consolidation is replacing many of my graded cards with ungraded copies, and taking those funds to purchase more cards and more expensive cards. So I am consolidating my grading collection, but my ungraded collection is getting bigger every day. This next one says, one of my all-time favorite episodes, Greg. This was really cool. As for this week, my answer with regard to consolidation is, it depends. To be more specific, it depends on the reasons someone decides to consolidate. Admittedly, my response is colored by my own hobby experiences, but I think there are two major reasons collectors decide to consolidate. The first is, as we grow in the hobby, we sometimes find we'd rather have a handful of cards we love than 2 handfuls of cards we like. For me, consolidation has always been the only way to land my grail cards, and I have no regrets in those cases. The second reason I think we consolidate is that sometimes we feel pressure to land all of our big cards right away. Not sure if anyone else has done this, but in the past, I've made the mistake of selling things I really like to get bigger cards now. Inevitably, these are the cases where I regret trying to consolidate, and many times end up just buying another copy of the card I sold. All that rambling to say that consolidation is generally a good thing, so long as we are staying patient and giving adequate thought into what we are selling and why. And another says, great episode. Love seeing how people store and display their cards. Good on consolidation, particularly as we get older in the hobby. We fund our lane and our interests, and we say goodbye to what we no longer want, circulating it in the hobby while injecting funds into more focused areas. It's a win-win for everyone. My friend John over at 3D80s Kid says, a quality video and thoughtful discussion as always, Greg. I don't think applying a qualitative assessment to how someone chooses to collect is ever necessary, so I'm not going to say that it is necessarily good or bad. If consolidating their cards is what the means by which someone needs to use to be able to afford some of the monster cards in the hobby, then by all means, go for it if that makes you happy. Right now, it's not for me, as I am attempting to own as many different player Hall of Famer cards, all at the same time, budget permitting. I already know that financial limits will likely exclude me from ever owning a Cap Anson card, and now with Joe Jackson eligible, he would definitely join that camp. But if at some point I complete this quest and still have collecting years left, I may decide to do the very same thing in order to be able to mentally tick off those check marks for those currently out of reach players. I will have to wait and see if the time comes that I reach that point, but I will certainly not judge anyone for making the decision to go that route now. A wise man once said, "It's just a hobby, collect what you like." And my good buddy Orlando at A Collector's Dream says, great video. Enjoy listening and seeing how others share their collection. I never shared my cards until YouTube a few years ago. I've always enjoyed them, but keep them in boxes by year. I've been consolidating my collection the last 10 years as I've gotten older. I had sets from the 50s through 80s, and it was just too many cards. The only way to get my bigger cards was to sell most of my lower priced cards and broke up most of my sets. I'll continue doing this for the rest of my collecting life.
Some great points there, and I absolutely can relate to a lot of that thinking. There are some cards I'd like to acquire before I'm done with this whole collecting thing. But if I have to continue to infuse new cash, I probably will never achieve many of them. But if I can use what I have and parlay that into the bigger card, the card that I have my ultimate sights set on, then it might be possible. So think back for a minute. Think back. Many of us are homeowners. Many of us aren't. But think back to those of us that are homeowners. Think back to your first house. Was that your dream house? Probably not. Your first house was probably not your dream house. But remember your excitement to get that first house? You were excited to acquire that first house. And maybe you had to save up for a while for the down payment. Maybe you had to liquidate something. Maybe you had to sell a car or a boat or some other asset. Maybe you had to cash in some retirement. Maybe you got an inheritance. But you were excited to get that house even though you didn't probably see yourself living in that house for the rest of your life. And then what happened is after a while, you said, yeah, this house has been good to us. I've enjoyed this house. But I'm ready for a bigger house because our family is growing. And maybe we need a bigger yard. Maybe we need more bedrooms. So what you did is you sold your first house and you cashed out to move into the bigger house. And that bigger house, you were excited because you finally had the extra room. You finally had the bigger yard. You finally had a little bit of a nicer neighborhood. And you were so excited to move into it. And then after a while, maybe you said, my kids and us were crawling all over each other. I need another house. You get the point. The point is, sometimes what happens is you get into something and you love it, but then you continue to want to move forward. You want to continue to advance. That's not to say that your first house wasn't a great house. That's not to say that your first house wasn't really good for you and your family and your spouse. It served its purpose, but it wasn't your ultimate goal. So maybe you've acquired some cards along the way and you really were excited to pick them up, but your interests changed, your needs changed, your wants changed. Maybe you just are collecting something totally different and you said, this is a really common card and what I'm into right now are rarer cards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell this card that I know I'll be able to reacquire because it's fairly easy to find, but I'm not going to have many opportunities to land that rarer card over there. I need to capitalize on it and I need to go all in to get that card. I have a couple of friends in the hobby that have sold some more common cards recently to acquire some rarer, bigger cards. Does that mean that they're not collectors? I don't think so. I don't think that it means they're not a collector. But Greg, collectors don't sell. Collectors continue to acquire. Yeah, maybe. Maybe some do. See, one of the things that I've really come to start to understand, and I've talked about this recently, is I can't put my value of how I collect onto somebody else. There are people who buy things and I'll say, I didn't think there was a wrong way to collect, but that's not the right way. Like, why would anyone be buying all of that? And we can't do that. I used to think that way. And probably at times still I have, a little bit of a donkey kick to my head and I go, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to do that. That's not for me to say. Some people have different goals and some people don't. Some people are cool just acquiring the dollar box stuff. But some people have ultimate goals and along the way they want to acquire and then move up, like the first house, and then acquire the second house, and then move up again, and then acquire the next house, and then move up again. And that doesn't mean that they're right. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just one way to do it. And I understand why some people, like my buddy Keith, the Lonely Basement Class, that guy's channel is fantastic. I love how much joy he will get out of, picking up a 1987 Topps Don Mattingly. I love it. I love he'll find a KB Toys Don Mattingly, and he is absolutely pumped. And I know that there are other people that are like, huh? Does that make him wrong? No. Does it make some of my friends that have been selling some more easy to acquire cards recently to go after the rarer card? Are they wrong? No. It's just one way to do it. It's one way to do this hobby. And is it the right way? No. Is it the wrong way? No. Is it a person's way? Absolutely, that's what it is. I don't want to say we. There are people who continue, and I see videos on it all the time, and I'm certainly guilty of doing this. So many people put their own value on what someone should or shouldn't do. We put our own value on that's a good way to do it, that's a bad way to do it. Certainly I'm part of that. And opinions are great. Opinions are great. Now, I know there's jokes about the word opinion. To me, if we all had the same opinion, this would be boring. If we all had the same background, life would be boring. If we all had the same belief system, that would be boring. The diversity of thought is, to me, the foundation of this channel. The foundation of this channel is hearing a variety of opinions and then sharing them and then talking about them. And I love hearing people's opinions. And I totally understand wanting to take this piece and this piece and this piece and get this bigger piece. I get that. And other people don't. But nobody's right and nobody's wrong.
Now, some people said consolidation is a result of interest changing. My dad chimes in and says, regarding last week's question about how to enjoy your collection, I had a PSA 8 complete 1960 set. I had the number 2 set in the registry at the time. I retired the set and sold it off card by card. Before doing that, I listed photos of most cards from that set. I can visit my set whenever I want to in the registry. That once number 2 set is now down in the 50s under the Miller collection. If anyone is interested, you can look it up. I am in the process of the consolidation of my collection. I'm selling off cards that I have multiple years of the same player. I'm going for older examples of the players that I think are historic baseball figures. Unfortunately, that seems to be in vogue, making the prices for such cards getting even more expensive. My buddy Dane over at Classy Sports Cards says, love your display. For me, Greg, my collection has taken so many twists and turns, and I'm okay with that. Now I have evolved into fewer cards in exchange for higher end ones. If I had 25 incredibly centered and fabulous eye appeal cards, I would be fine with that. And treat it as a 25-man roster. If one comes along better than the one in the starting lineup, then one gets cut and sold. That's just where I am at this stage of my life in collecting. Great show. Thanks. Another says, Greg, another fun episode. Always interesting to see how others enjoy the hobby. This week's question is rather timely. Over the weekend, I emailed 3 hobby YouTube content creators asking them for their opinion on the same subject as it currently applies to my collection. I have a 1950s set that I am 2 cards away from completing. I asked them their opinion on moving on from the 1967 Topps Aaron, Clemente, Mantle, and Mays, all in a grade of 6 or higher, to complete the 1950s set. I really don't think that there is a wrong answer or wrong way to collect. I could argue with equal passion for either side of the question. If you consolidate, then you get either money to spend as you see fit on other cards that you want, and possibly the satisfaction of completing a set. If you don't consolidate, then you still have cards that you obviously like, and you just have to save up and get new cards. If you think you will want to acquire the cards that you are moving on from again in the future, you might be better off just keeping your cards and saving up for the other cards. I think consolidation is a natural occurrence in the hobby. As collectors or taste in cards change, our interests change. Our available hobby funds and storage space can change, and our priorities can change over time. In the hobby, everyone needs to do what makes sense to them and not worry about what anyone else may think. That's just my opinion, though. And another comment says, great show as always. About the question for this week about consolidation, I see it just as a thing that is happening, neither good or bad. People always want to try and get better. It's human nature. But I always see it as people's desires change. At one time, someone may want to collect all of one player's cards, no matter if it's an insert or a throwback, a tribute card, along with their playing days cards. Then all of a sudden, decide that they just want to keep the playing days cards. Some collectors are forced to consolidate due to financial support or loss of space. It's very situationally determined. At least that's the way I feel.
I want to start by going back to my dad's comment, where he talked about how he was a 1960 set collector and how he really liked the aspect of the set registry that he can still revisit his set. See, a lot of people bash the set registry, and I probably do too. And the part of the set registry that I don't like is I don't like that it's just PSA. And I don't like the fact that people are willing, they're so hell-bent on competing that they'll pay thousands of dollars for someone they've never heard of because it'll move them up a spot. Okay. See, I just did it. I just put my value on somebody else's way of collecting. I shouldn't do that. I apologize. Now, but back to that comment, the thing that I really like about it is, see, my dad was a 1959 and 1960 set builder. And I remember asking him, hey, Dad, why didn't you ever buy any 53 tops or 52 tops or Gaudis or Tito 6s or ice cream cards or turn of the century cards? And he said, I was so focused on what I was doing and the lane I was in that I didn't even really pay attention to that other stuff. See, he was very goal-oriented on finding really nice, really sharp 59s and 60s. And he built an incredible set. And he didn't really, I mean, these are his words. He didn't really look at other things. He was a very, very focused collector. And over the last few years, as I've been, he watches my channel because, he's probably trying to be supportive and stuff. He's like, I really actually like some of these other sets. I really like he really likes the 56 top set. He really likes the 53 top set. And so he's been kind of going down and buying some of those things recently. And interests can change. Now, when my dad had his 1960 set, had a lot of value, right? But when he liquidated it, he then now has funds to go after some of his new interests. Sometimes the hunt is the most fun part. Going through a binder and hunting. I've mentioned this before, guys. I'm like hooked on going to estate sales. Like, I went to an estate sale this weekend and I was just digging through crap. And I'm digging through crap because the hunt, it must be that pirate part of me that I love hunting for treasure because I love the hunt. And it's the same thing, and that's the part of set building that I like. I've kind of been, I'm not sure on set building, even though I'm in the middle of building a set, right? That Allen and Ginter pirate set. I'm down to one card. I'm one card. I mean, every time I check Facebook, every time I check eBay, I'm like, what if I find it? What if I find the card? Like, the hunt is so much fun. But sometimes what happens is you're done with the hunt. You've scratched the itch. It doesn't itch anymore. And you're like, that was fun. Now what? I know some people that have built that pirate set that I'm working on. They built it. They finished it. They broke it up and sold it off. It was like, that was a fun hunt. Now let's use those funds and let's start a new hunt. Let's go down a new road and a new thing to chase. See, that's one of the things I think a lot of people that have been in the hobby, I think one of the reasons that a lot of people that have been in the hobby a long time are going to older and older and older is not necessarily because the older stuff is more interesting. I think one of the reasons that people go after older stuff is because generally, not always, generally, if it's old, it's harder to find. And if you've been to 100 card shows I would be willing to bet at, 97 of those 100 card shows, you probably came across a 1960 Topps Carl Yastrzemski. They're at most card shows. It's not a particularly rare card. And if you've been in the hobby for a while, you go, I have one already, or I've seen it a million times. So what people tend to do is they go, ooh, I want to hunt something. I want to hunt for a deal of this thing I don't see that often. So I think the veteran collectors, and I don't mean old, I don't mean more knowledgeable, I just mean people that have been around it for a while, I think part of the reason that they go to older stuff is because there's still a hunt for them. Maybe they've never seen one before. Maybe they've only seen one and they didn't buy it and it got away. I think the hunt is part of the fun. And the interests changing are sometimes a result of kind of being done with the hunt. Maybe if you're hunting a Hank Aaron player run and then you finish it, you're like, okay, do I still need the Hank Aaron player run? I've done it. I chased it. I caught it. It's like Wile E. Coyote chasing after the Roadrunner, which he never caught. But it's like he's almost there. If he caught the Roadrunner, then the whole shtick is over. I think the hunt is part of the fun. And I think sometimes when people have scratched that itch and they've scratched that itch and they've checked that box and they've checked that box, their interests change. So they go, that was fun, but I think I want to sell some of this stuff so that I have funds to go after this other stuff, which is interesting me now because there's a hunt. And I know that that's one of the things that's been happening with my good buddy Orlando of A Collector's Dream. He just did a video the other day on his some of his favorite Mickey Mantle cards. And he talked about how he's sold off a lot of his collection to be going after some bigger cards, but also some cards that he'd never had before. I think the chase is definitely part of it.
Some people said consolidation isn't for me. This first one said, fun video, good ideas on organizing and displaying collections. As for consolidation, it's not really for me. There are too many cards I want and enjoy. I can get as much joy from a 33 Gaudy Cliff Heathcote as a 52 Bowman Willie Mays. It's fun to have big cards, but it's also fun for me to complete runs and sets. I get as much satisfaction picking up a tough 66 Topps high number to further the completion of my set as I get from picking up a Mantle. It's all fun, and I wouldn't be satisfied with only 40 or 50 cards in my collection. This next one says, fantastic card room. I can understand the appeal of consolidation and selling off smaller cards to buy bigger cards. However, it's not something I'm ready to do yet with my collection.
I love people that are content. See, I'm never content. I'm always looking to the next thing. I'm never satisfied. It's not something I'm particularly proud of. But I'm always going, what's next? What now? I mean, even this summer, I'm sitting here with my channel and I'm going, there's a couple of things I've been thinking about. Well, maybe I should do this and maybe I should do that. And I think I will, but I'm like, why can't I just be satisfied with what I have? I've got it pretty good. Anyway, I'm going down a bad rabbit hole. But let me tell you a quick story that just popped into my head. So my grandpa, my papa, my mom's dad, I've talked about him. He's the one with the with the fireplace gloves that I showed the other day. So we went to Baskin Robbins. I remember this was, maybe 20 years ago. We're at Baskin Robbins, and we're all, 31 flavors, right? There's like lots of different options there. And so he's kind of sitting there patiently with his legs crossed, as we're all ordering. And we say, Papa, come on up. What do you want? And he goes, I'd like a scoop of vanilla, please. And I'm like, vanilla? I mean, they've got Rocky Road, they've got mint chip, they've got quarterback crunch, they've got baseball nut, they've got all these options with all these different flavors, all this excitement. You getting a scoop of vanilla? And he goes, yeah. I go, why? He goes, I like vanilla. Now, I like vanilla too. Vanilla is actually an underrated flavor. But I'm like, have you ever tried any of these other flavors? No. Well, why not? Why would I try them? I know I like vanilla. That's actually, I think, it's actually kind of a gift to just be happy with what you know and what you have. I've got cards in my collection that I want to still be really excited about. But I'm like, they're cool. But maybe I should move them to get this other thing, the new chase. I want to be able to just be content to look through the same binder and the same cards. I'm jealous of that. I'm jealous of finding vanilla, loving vanilla, and sticking with vanilla. Now, I'm not an adventurous person. I'm not a person, I do tend to get the same thing most places that I go for restaurants. So maybe to a certain extent, I have some contentment, but there's something about this hobby, and there's something about that rush that you get when there's a new want or there's a new pickup, that those endorphins must satisfy my brain more than the endorphins of just being content. Does that mean I'm not a true collector? I don't even know what that means. I've heard people say that. But I think what they mean is a true collector doesn't sell. They just buy stuff and enjoy it and then hold it until they die, I guess. I don't really know what it means. But I don't know. I mean, I have cards that I've had for 35 years. I have cards that I've had that I bought and then a few months later I sold. I don't know what it means. But I love the people who are content and who like having lots of different cards and don't have any feeling of need to move up. And there are people who have reached out to me and I've seen videos from and I've talked to, and I don't understand how people could sell cards. How could you sell this card that you like just so you have money to go buy some other card? And again, I think that's putting one person's value on a different collector. Some collectors like to buy and hold. Some collectors like to continue going down the trail and seeing what's around the next bend. One of my favorite things to do is to play a new golf course I've never played before. Seeing the hole for the first time. What does this hole do? Does it go right? Does it go left? Uphill? Downhill? Is there a lake? Do I need to lay up? Do I need to go for it? Seeing a new hole to me is really, really fun in golf. Not knowing what's around the next bend, for me, is fun. That's not fun for everyone. Some people are okay playing the same course every day. And I like playing the same course a lot. But I also get a different type of joy from seeing something new and chasing something new and experiencing something new that I haven't experienced before.
Some people said consolidation is creating a problem. This comment says, to answer your question for next week, I think consolidation is both good and bad. I use consolidation to remove lower tier assets to acquire newer or higher priced assets or to reduce my overall inventory, and that is good for me, especially at my age. The problem I see is that too many other vintage collectors are doing the same thing due to age, financial issues, or finding more interesting higher priced items, etc. This floods the market with lower tier items that most people don't want or already have. The large quantity of supplies with lower demand will inevitably reduce the values of those cards. It hurts the vintage sales market overall, but the great thing is it makes cards that you may want to purchase more affordable. If you could get more younger collectors interested in vintage cards, the high supply, low demand issue wouldn't be a problem at all. So overall, is both good and bad for the hobby.
I thought this was such an interesting point. I mean, I've been doing these videos about once a month. I may have been missed a month or something for a couple of years of card sales under $50 during the month. And I've noticed some of those lower mid-tier players / grades seem to be getting more affordable. They seem like they're selling for less. They seem like they're more plentiful. But it feels like a lot of the cards that my dad is chasing, I'm chasing, my friends are chasing, those don't seem to be getting cheaper. Those seem to be getting more expensive. So a lot of vintage cards are going down or becoming easier to acquire. But some stuff is becoming harder to acquire, and it is more expensive. And this might be a really good point. You know, as one of the things I've talked about is, you know, if you've got 100,000 cards in your collection, when you die, I kind of think you might be leaving a burden to your family. Now, does that mean you shouldn't? Not saying that. I'm just being, I think that's a lot of work. It's like if your parents are hoarders versus your parents are very simply living, simple, and you got to go clear out their stuff someday. We're all going to have to do that someday. The hoarder's house is going to be a lot harder. The person with lots of stuff is going to be harder. If your heirs end up with 50 cards, that'd be a lot easier for them than boxes and boxes and boxes in a storage, locker full of stuff, right? A garage full of stuff. It'd be way harder for them. So I think that a lot of people are very conscious of that, and that is something that matters to them. And so one of the things that I think is happening is, as is mentioned here, is that a lot of people, as they're getting older, they're trying to kind of pare down their collection. They're selling off some of the masses to buy just a few items. They're consolidating, not necessarily because they don't like the other stuff anymore, but just because it's just making things easier for the potential future heirs. Well, if a lot of people are doing that, and a lot of people are watching YouTube or scrolling on Facebook or going on Instagram and they see, oh my gosh, look at this guy's new pickup. I want that. Look at that new pickup. I want that. And that guy's pickup. I want that. See, before what used to happen is we used to all kind of collect and it was all kind of private. Nobody knew really what everyone else was doing. But that has changed. And that's a good thing because we all get to share the hobby now. But it's a bad thing because I think that we do try to keep up with the Joneses. We do look around and go, I want that. How can I get that? And you get so wide-eyed at what other people are doing. So I do think that if a lot of people are paring down their collection later in life, vintage collectors especially, and a lot of people are, deciding to try to sell lots of little things to get some big things because the big things are more interesting. Not necessarily, but some people might feel that way. Then does that mean there's just a massive amount of the lesser stuff to go around? Is that why the prices are so much cheaper on a 1960 Alkali line or a 1958 Whitey Ford? Is that what's happening? I don't know. I thought these were some great points. And again, I'm not trying to suggest that one way is right and one way is wrong. I am really working hard at rewiring my own brain to realizing that as long as somebody is getting joy from however they're doing it, fine. But there are some things that people do and I go, really? That brings you joy? And I gotta smack myself. Get a donkey kick and stop thinking that way. Because that's not okay. So my question for this upcoming, by the way, stop, first, time out. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow night, Tuesday night, June 10th, 9 p.m. Eastern on MidLife Live 6 with my panel, which is fantastic. Now, my question for this upcoming week is as follows. Which two players would you remove from the Hall of Fame? Which two players would you replace them with? There's been a lot of Hall of Fame talk. We're coming up on the Hall of Fame ceremonies here pretty soon. The new Hall of Fame class. There's been the Pete Rose thing, the Shoeless Joe thing. It's always interesting to talk about the Hall of Fame. And I didn't really take the bait when, because there was the whole Pete Rose thing. I was just like, I don't need to make a video on this. There's a million people making a video on this. But I am curious, who are the two people in the Hall of Fame that if you could wave your magic wand would not be in the Hall of Fame and you could replace them with two other people, who would they be? That's my question to you. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this, but I'm also excited to see you all tomorrow night, MidLife Live, number 6.